How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest Big Mets update segment to get into. This time, May 6th, 2025, as the Metropolitans this past night, as I'm currently recording this video way too early in the AM, right around 3:30 a.m., like the madman that I am. So hit that like and subscribe button as you come in, as the content never stops here on the platform. But I just finished a live show not too long ago, as the Mets took down the Diamondbacks this past night by a final score of 5-4. So please make sure to check out that post-game content in case you guys didn't, as we broke down everything that you need to know from the key takeaways in that ball game, innings 1 through 9, and everything in between, because we're going to further expand on some of those key takeaways, mainly on the offensive end, headlined by a man that continues to stay red hot for a guy that's supposed to be cold as the pole bear, that being in Mr. Pete Alonso himself. We'll get into what Alonso did so right this past night against the Diamondbacks, and what he will likely continue to do right for this Mets team throughout the course of the 162, and what exactly is it about Alonso that's made such a drastic difference in his approach here to begin the 2025 season. From there, we're going to get into a man that's no longer the Mets lab, not now just for the next week to 2 weeks. No, we're looking at north of 2 months without Jesse Winker now due to his oblique strain. We'll get into that more, and ultimately what it means now for Brett Baty, who was the call-up option for the Mets this past day. He gets the call. So what is his utilization going to be in this lineup, and just how much opportunity is he going to have now with Jesse Winker not immediately returning to this Mets team? And to wrap up the show, we'll get into a bit on the bullpen, as A.J. Minter is officially out for the entire 2025 season, as much as that pains me to say. So how are the Mets going to remedy this bullpen without Danny Young and A.J. Minter, when looking at both low and high leverage options for the bullpen? That is what we're going to get into and plenty more. So thank you guys kindly for smashing that like and subscribe button as your first chime in. It's greatly appreciated. And also let me know how is the audio in the comments down below, everybody. I'm actually using my wireless mic today. Unfortunately, my previous mic just went to kaput on me. I don't know why, so I'm still trying to figure that out. That's why our post-game segment this past night was utilized with my webcam audio, which was a bit echoey, but still clear and concise for you guys to hear. So thank you guys so much in advance for all that down below in the comments as always. And shout out, as always, as well, to our amazing sponsor at SeatGeek that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. In case you guys don't know SeatGeek, you must be living under a rock, because when it comes to your ticketing needs for Mets tickets, concert show tickets, comedy show tickets, you name it, SeatGeek has you covered. With over 70,000 active events to choose from, making them the #1 rated ticketing app in the game for a reason. The main reason why I personally have utilized their amazing app for a number of years prior to them becoming an official sponsor here on the platform. Thanks to you guys going out your way to utilize Mets tickets with our amazing promo code WARDY10. That's linked down below in the description for you guys to click and be added for your next ticket purchase. 10% off your next ticket, that is. But not only have you guys helped support the channel here, making this not only the #1 rated ticketing app in the game, but our official ticketing sponsor all season long here on the WardyNYM platform. What separates them has been, and what will continue to be, in my humble opinion, and the opinions of many, is their grading scale. So you know exactly the best bang for your buck for the tickets that you seek, everybody. They have a color coordination scale from red to green and a rating scale from 1 to 10. If you're in the 1 through 5 range and you're more in the red, that means it's not a good bang for your buck, and you're probably better off getting tickets elsewhere there in the SeatGeek app. But if you get a ticket like what you see beside me there, in a north of 10 range and in the green, that means they're a tremendous bang for your buck, a great bargain, and you should go and seek those tickets should you have interest there in the SeatGeek app. So again, guys, please make sure to head over to SeatGeek by clicking that link down below in the description, utilizing our promo code WARDY10. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. And shout out to SeatGeek, as always, for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. But as we get back in this one, everybody, let's talk about the key takeaways from this 5-4 victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks, because there are a couple things that are very notable from this matchup. It's one, Griffin Canning giving the Mets a rock-solid 5 innings there, 1 earned run, 1 walk. We had right around 4 to 6 hits allowed, 6 strikeouts, a 2.5 ERA now on the season for Griffin Canning. We love to see that, and the Mets continue to get quality, even though they haven't gone as much quantity in regards to innings. They have gone quality, and their starters only going, say, 5, sometimes 6, and even sometimes, rarely so far this season, 7 innings. But what has been the commonality with the Mets pitching so far this year is that with their starting staff, with the exception of Tyler McGill and Blade Tidwell over the past couple days, no one's been giving up runs, knocking on wood at this point, more than 4 earned each and every start. So that has really helped pave the way for their early success so far this season. It's been a combination of some key guys that are offense game production done on a nightly basis, other pitching that really helped carry them again to begin the year, all without Frankie Montas and Shamanaya, which makes it 10 times more impressive. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this rotation is going to make up and look. Ultimately, one Montas and Manaea return. What does it mean for Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, a six-man rotation, and everything in between? But to go from the pitching, everybody, let's talk about the offense here. Because when we think of offensive standouts this past night, there are two that come to mind. And let's start again with Mr. Smile himself and Francisco Lindor. Because Lindor had himself a ball game, baby. And this was a really needed game, in my opinion, for Lindor, that's had not terrible at-bats the past week, but hasn't been as hot as what he was the week and a half prior there, especially when the Mets had their 7-0 homestand, when this man was just an absolute menace. He's cooled off a little bit since then, but this home run swing certainly made the difference. Lindor with a 1-for-4 game with a 3-run ding-dong, absolutely ripped there to center right field that you guys see there. A 289 average and an 830 OPS for our captain, Mr. Lindor himself. And at this point, everybody, we just have to be very grateful that we're getting Francisco Lindor again, this locked in this early into the regular season. We're not used to this as Mets fans. We're usually used to Francisco Lindor batting, 100 to, 200 or so the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, and always complaining about, oh my goodness gracious, Francisco Lindor, we love the guy, but he's such a slow starter to the season. Well, Lindor's slow start this year was pretty much the first week and a half, 2 weeks. That was about it. From that point on, he got on an absolute tear, and he has been just as valuable as anyone else could have possibly imagined in this Mets lineup to begin the regular season. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. How do you feel about our captain, our unsung hero, and Francisco Lindor, who continues to lead the charge not only on the field with his great defensive product, but also with the bat-to-ball skills from both the left and the right side of the plate? It feels like almost every single game, Lindor is either getting himself a leadoff single, double, or home run, or he's batting over 400 in the leadoff position this year in his first at-bats of the actual game, or it's him tearing the cover off the ball at Citi Field because he thrives around Mets fans, which I absolutely love. You can clearly tell that he feeds off of the energy when you have 35 to 40,000 strong roaring at Citi Field, or it's clutching up midway through the game the way that he did in this one when the Mets needed to get some power, needed to get some insurance, and that at the time gave the Mets a 5-1 lead. And that home run was so vital for a Mets team that won by 1 run in the end here. And now for the Mets over their past 3+ games against the Diamondbacks have all ended by 1 or 2 runs. This Mets team on an absolute roll, finally getting a win in their favor this time on a 1-run deficit because, mind you, everybody, the Mets past 6 of 7 losses entering this game against the Diamondbacks, they've lost by just 1 run. So they've had a lot of tight ball games where they haven't produced runners to scoring position, but the Mets did go 2 for 8 in this game and left 6 on base. And that 2 for 8 is notable because that's in large part because of Francisco Lindor driving those guys in with runners of scoring position. Because the other player that we're about to highlight here was productive in his own right, but didn't take advantage of guys at necessarily third base the way that Francisco Lindor certainly did here. And that's why he deserves the further player spotlight for being our captain and being our leader on both facets of the ball and continuing to do a great job in doing so. But going on from talking about Francisco Lindor, let's now talk about the polar bear who stays red hot for a guy that's supposed to stay cold technically given the nickname, and that's Pete Alonso. Look at this, another towering shot for Pete Alonso. 116 exit velo right off the bat there. Sayonara, it's out of here to the left. 425 feet later, the Mets had themselves a 2-1 lead at this point in the ball game. They're absolutely tanking that one off of Ryan Nelson. What I love so much about this at-bat is a continuation of what has worked so well so far this year for Pete Alonso. Say it with me, everybody. It's getting pitches to hit, especially after 4-pitch walking Juan Soto the at-bat prior. Alonso's going to take offense to that, and he is going to make these pitchers pay night in, night out, day in, day out. And we're seeing that exemplified yet again here, everybody. A 4-pitch walk for the second time in the ball game. The first 4 innings there to Juan Soto, and this time Ryan Nelson has to pay. Absolutely ate up that one upstairs like no tomorrow. Pete Alonso now has 9 home runs on the season, has an absurd amount of RBIs, and just look at the numbers here. A 349 average, a 1,143 OPS. The guy's not only the best contact hitter in the National League right now, he's not only the best slugger, but he is the best overall hitter right now in all the National League guys. There is not a single player in the National League at the time of recording this video that has more hits than Pete Alonso. There is not a guy that's looked more impressive from the contact to gap ability to spreading for all fields and for hitting with tremendous power. Alonso has been jaw-droppingly impressive, and something that was impressive too that I want to reiterate going back to Lindor for a second because I meant to make note of it a second ago was not just Lindor's on-field product with the offense, but also the defense. Lindor had an absurdly good tag that we saw on Alek Thomas trying to steal second base late in the ball game. And between Alvarez's throw and an even better tag by Lindor, that was just tremendous. And that was a game changer for the Mets because that was in the ninth inning after that leadoff runner got on from an Alonso under-toss throwing error to Edwin Diaz, mind you, as Alonso defensively just forgot how to field there, and then he tries to steal second base. They got a little too greedy, though. Mets took advantage from Alvy to Mr. Lindor, Francisco to Francisco, getting that huge out. That was a difference maker in this 5-4 victory. But so was the polar bear and Pete Alonso, everybody. Another home run for Pete here. 2 RBIs on the day, 2 hits as well. Again, pulling to the left side, heading for opposite field. He's doing this on a nightly basis, and I just feel spoiled as a Mets fan to be reiterating this on a nightly basis the way that we're doing that right here, right now. Because, listen, we've seen a lot of great runs for Pete Alonso. We've seen the 2019 home run hitting season where he had over 50-plus bombs, best record in now Major League Baseball at this point, most home runs hit ever by a rookie that we've seen. Fast forward 2021, up and down, after the 2020 season that we saw, but in 2021 still had a lot of raw offensive production. 2022, in my opinion, the best all-around season we've seen from Pete Alonso up until this point, spreading for all fields, taking advantage of runners in scoring position, and being absolutely clutch when called upon. 2023, hand injury from Charlie Morton, just couldn't find consistency and had a very finicky year there that we saw in 2023 with the Mets offense that was finicky. Now, the baseline numbers weren't horrendous by Alonso, but when you look at the expected numbers, they did fluctuate quite a bit, leading to the 2024 season for Pete that, as we all know, was absolutely abysmal with regards to scoring position. Still had 35 home run season or so and still had 80-plus RBIs, but those are like even below rookie numbers for Pete Alonso, who has been so much better consistently throughout his career than what we got in the 2024 season. Fast forward to present day, 2025, with that new contract with the Mets, and Pete Alonso is looking to stay with the Mets long-term, and I gotta be honest, guys, I don't see a chance in heck that the Mets wouldn't want to consider Alonso long-term with the way that he is not only finding his swing, but this is far and away the best plate approach I've ever seen from Alonso as a Mets fan. As someone who was actively in attendance at Citi Field for his first home run ever at Citi Field back in March of 2019 against the Washington Nationals, a big back-and-forth game where J.D. Davis had 2 home runs. Cano and Conforto went back-to-back on home runs, if I'm not mistaken, and it was an absolute electric factory in a game where the Mets won it in the end. Pete Alonso is now on the cusp of being the Mets home run leader all time this season. We all know he's going to get there, and he's looking like that he's going to be on a pace right now that could find him in the 300 average range for a good chunk of the season, because we're already a month and a half in the year, and Buddy is casually sitting right around 350 or over 1,000 OPS. It's not just about the fact that Alonso's hitting baseballs consistently, it's his approach at the plate. We all see what Alonso's doing different, and it's as follows, everybody. He's not chasing the typical breaking ball down in a way that has been famously his issue in years past, nor is he getting caught up and in on the heater, which has also been his demise that we've seen, especially against left-handed pitching in years past. Add that with him not clutching up nearly enough for runners in scoring position. Now it's such a night and day difference where you're praying, you're begging that Alonso is coming up to the plate there, and you're hoping that Soto gets walked if he's not going to produce anything, because you know that you have such a great guy batting behind him. And as Mr. Soto famously said it himself earlier this year, that was completely blown out of proportion by, I had the best hitter in baseball behind me last year. Well, fast forward to this season, Mr. Soto, you have the best hitter in all the National League behind you right now. You have one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. The fact that is currently May 6, 2025, and Pete Alonso is the leading National League MVP candidate over Juan Soto and over Francisco Lindor is what you need to hear on how much he's made adjustments at the plate, how locked in he is, and ultimately just how comfortable, composed, calm, cool, and collected, all the C's we could think of for Pete Alonso, because he has been that guy all season long, guys. I got to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What has impressed you the most about Alonso? Has it been the fact that he has more hits than anyone else in the National League? Is it the fact that he leads all the National League right now between average and OPS? Is it the fact that he's completely had a different but greater plate approach there by not swinging down and away, not chasing nearly as much as what he used to, and getting on base at a great clip between walks, and of course, just again, getting on base because he's hitting the baseball so much? Whatever your thoughts are, please drop them in the comments down below, and thank you guys kindly for doing exactly that. Now, let's get from talking about Alonso and what's been going right for the Mets to sadly what is now going wrong. Because as we know, Jesse Winker, and the one and only game Buddy played in the outfield so far this year, and the one and only throw he's ever made in the outfield this season, it has now sidelined him 2 months. And I have to be blunt and honest by saying this. I love Jesse Winker, but that's inexcusable. There is never a circumstance where that can ever happen. How is that justified? And my initial reaction is naturally, Jesse Winker got hurt in game 1 of a 2-game doubleheader when it was slick a little wet out. First game in the outfield all year. Buddy probably didn't stretch enough. That's the immediate reaction right there, especially when you had a day game for your first game of the day right around 12:15, and your second game wasn't until 6:15. So I'm not overly shocked that this happened, but more so disappointed by the reality of it, because we initially thought that, okay, we're going to be without Jesse Winker in that platoon DH to pair with Starling Marte for the next 2 weeks minimum, right? Well, come to find out, he's out 6 to 8 weeks minimum because it's a grade 2 oblique strain. So what does this mean, everybody? It means that the door is completely open for Brett Baty to try to run away with a consistent spot on this Mets team. And here's the thing too, everybody. If Brett Baty doesn't perform over the next couple weeks, the Mets don't need to stay with Brett Baty. They can go to a John Singleton. They can go to a WardyNYM. They can go to someone else that they choose to deem right fit for them, maybe more on the power front than what they're getting on the versatile front and Baty right now. But let's get into why Carlos Mendoza went out of his way to call up Brett Baty here over the Singletons and the Youngs further, and what his utilization will be. Because what many reaffirmed this past day is exactly what I told you guys in a video a day ago on the breaking news that Baty was officially called up, and it is as follows. By having Brett Baty up, it causes a great issue for Carlos Mendoza, meaning that he has an abundance of options that he can choose from giving Brett Baty potential starts at times at second or third base, and that'll definitely dictate what you do with Vientos. If Vientos will get a start at third base, maybe you'll get a start at DH, maybe who will come off the bench for a game, especially depending on Vientos' lack of production defensively. You could go with different defensive figurations on the outfield front as well. With McNeil, obviously, you can have more center. You can have him in the left. You can, again, prioritize Baty more in that infield should you wish. You can also have Baty come in as a late-game defensive replacement for the Mets at second or third base. He can come in as a pinch runner for you later on in the ball game. There are various possibilities. And then you add in the fact that you could put Baty at the DH position for favorable pitching matchups, mainly facing right-handed pitching. Or you could have Baty in the lineup and have a really absolutely emphasize lefty-heavy lineup where you could have Baty starting at second or third, because let's say they have a game coming up where the starter splits against lefties are horrendous and the Mets just want to spam every lefty and their mother in the lineup. You can do that by having Baty get a start at second or third and having then McNeil in center and then having and left WardyNYM. You see how much it is that easy to maximize lefty output there? Not that I'm saying the Mets are going to consistently do this. I'm just saying there are a boatload of options that the Mets have with Brett Baty on the roster, knowing how versatile he is in the infield. Whereas if you brought up someone in John Singleton, he is pretty much a standalone DH. If you bring up someone in WardyNYM, yes, Young can play all over the place, but he doesn't play it all that proficient. He's a guy that you want more as a backup first base option and DH more than anything else, and you want him consistently in that Mets infield. So that in part is what helps separate Brett Baty from the rest. And the Mets also had a little bit of an urgency to call up Brett Baty, because if the Mets keep Brett Baty down for 20-plus games in the minor leagues, if I'm not mistaken, and again, don't quote me on this, let me know in the comments down below to reaffirm that I'm correct, but I'm like 95% sure that I am. As long as Baty wasn't down for 20 games, he doesn't lose an option. But if he was down for 20-plus games in the minor leagues, he would lose then his final option that I believe that he has for the Mets right now. So that's in part why the Mets brought him up too, knowing that he wasn't down there that long, and also knowing that he's 25, has the most upside for this Mets team right now, given their minor league options, and is the most versatile in doing so. So what can you expect for Brett Baty, everybody? You can expect a little bit of everything. You're going to see him again utilized in games where he gets starts here or there, where he's coming in as late game replacements, coming in as pinch runners. They're going to get unbelievably creative to try to maximize their offensive and defensive output based on the respective competition from the opposing starter on a day-by-day, night-by-night basis. So all I'm saying is just don't be surprised when you see Brett Baty utilized in all these different situations. One day he's at DH, one day he's at second or third, one day he is commanding things as a late-game defensive replacement, one day he's a pinch runner. You're going to see a mix of all these things, so let's see what happens with Brett Baty as he's still trying to prove himself to be a consistent player at the major league level. And yet again, an opportunity has now arisen for him to prosper and blossom at minimum in a platoon DH role where he would face mainly right-handed pitching where he could really try to lock in that split playing time with Starling Marte. And at absolute worst, Brett Baty doesn't know how to lift a baseball again. His defense is strong, and he is sent down after a couple weeks of the Mets maybe not loving what they have, and they consider someone else that has more offensive output. And at absolute best, Brett Baty finally runs away with something here over the next 6 to 8 weeks and puts the Mets in a great position where they have their hand forced a bit as to what they should do with Jesse Winker when he eventually comes back from injury. That's what I hope is what happens. I hope it's the latter there and not the first half of that convo, but we will inevitably see soon enough what is happening with Brett Baty and what's next for him this season. But going on from talking about Brett Baty, everybody, now let's talk about what is happening with AJ Minter and this Mets bullpen, because this is not ideal. We heard for the past week and a half plus that AJ Minter was already pondering a potential season-ending surgery. Then we find out reports today from Andy Martino saying how a little taken back as the Mets were initially hoping to have him back in August or September, but again, you don't float out there for over a week straight that Minter could go down with a season-ending surgery on his lat strain just for it to not be the case. As soon as it was rumored and mentioned that Danny Young could have Tommy John surgery, we knew he was having Tommy John surgery. Even if he was getting a second opinion, it didn't change from the obvious fact that we all knew he was getting Tommy John surgery, right? Like when Christian Scott got postponed of his surgery last year, and I apologize for all the itchiness, my allergies is kicking my butt right now, it became a further reality that we knew he was inevitably getting his surgery. It was a matter of when, not if. So now that AJ Minter is off the board when he pitched like a 1.5-year race so far this season with the Mets, Minter was absolutely nails. To not have him in that setup spot for Edwin Diaz absolutely crushes me as someone who's looking forward to having a true dominant, high leverage option of a southpaw in this bullpen. Now you add in the southpaw aspect as Brooks Raley can return this Mets bullpen as sometime there in the month of June. That's very encouraging, but we're still a month away. So what are the Mets going to do with this Mets bullpen in the meantime? Well, there are a couple different routes they may go. And actually, I apologize, folks. I'm going to blow my nose just real quick. I'm going to mute myself in doing so. Okay, we're good to go. There, love to see it. Now, to further break this down here, the bullpen, what needs to change? You need to have both a low and a high leverage option with losing Danny Young and AJ Minter. Now, I feel like the low leverage option, the Mets have already started to figure that out with Jesus Cabrera, who went 2 shutty against the Cardinals in one of the games in the doubleheader 48 hours ago or so at the time you guys likely watching this. Then you add in the AJ Minter replacement, and initially that was Danilo Nunez to a degree, but Danilo Nunez needs to figure out how to command the strike zone consistently, even when having a 4-run lead, the way that he walked everyone their mother with no outs, and the Mets 5-4 victory this past night. And yes, Danilo Nunez is the sole reason why it was a 1-run ball game versus it being something of a greater win for this Mets team. And I love Nunez. I love the upside with his slider, fastball combo. But when you're pitching like 2019 Edwin Diaz and you lose complete command of your slider, naturally you're not destined to have a good day there for your season debut. And Nunez was sadly not having it whatsoever. He will get better. I know that in confidence, and we will see that happen at the major league level this season. But knowing that Nunez is far from a certainty in what we're getting is all the more reason as to why the Mets need to make sure that they continue to evaluate their minor league options, including guys like Rico Garcia, including guys like Kevin Herget and Chris Davinsky to varying degrees, right? Because I don't love them at the major league level. Rico Garcia, I'm kind of bullish on because I like how his fastball and off-speed and breaking pitches play. I'm curious how it'll be at the major league level. Tyler Zuber, I had more confidence in before he's gotten rocked multiple times in the minor leagues. I also love some minor league options from the Mets that aren't even in AAA, but are either with the Brooklyn Cyclones in high A, i.e. Ryan Lambert, for example, or the Rebel Ponies, right? So there are multiple guys that I'm thinking of that aren't even necessarily in Syracuse right now that I could see impacting this Mets team at some point, including Mr. Felipe De La Cruz, the lefty option that's looked tremendous as both a starter and a bulk reliever since being called up now to Syracuse. He was called, we talked about him a couple days ago with over 6,000 views on that video. Check it out in case you guys haven't already. Felipe De La Cruz was called up after having a sub-2 ERA as a starter and bulk reliever for the Rumble Ponies this year and had an absurd K to walk ratio of 20 plus Ks to just 3 walks with a 1.98 ERA across a decent amount of innings. Gets the call to Syracuse and does what no other Syracuse starter ever does, it feels like, and that is to have 6 shutty, 9 strikeouts or so, a just absolutely dominant performance for his Syracuse debut. And that's a guy who, in my opinion, is going to profile best as a lefty reliever option, has a fastball that plays up, touches the high 90s, and is looking brilliant. And I promise you, in part, why the Mets kind of rushed him up when he wasn't even a top 30 prospect heading into the season, going from the Roma Ponies to AAA is because they know that his stuff can play at the major league level, but probably more in a reliever setting. So that is a guy, Felipe De La Cruz, I'm keeping a close eye out for, as he may get the call for this Mets team as soon as within this next month or so. As long as everything continues to trend upward for him, it won't be long before he's at the bigs trying to make a difference and see what Jeremy Hefner and Desi Driscoll can do to get the best out of him. But if it's not going to be an internal option out of one of the many that I just listed, there are external options. Not many, but there are some. And whether it's someone that the Mets consider in the waiver wire that they decide to trade for because they know that that player is going to get claimed, the opposing team that's giving up said player leads to a $100K trade, like when the Mets acquired Luis Torrens last year from the Yankees, or when they had to give up Alexander Canario before the season started to the Pittsburgh Pirates. These things naturally happen. So I wouldn't be shocked if Stearns goes down that route, should he wish, or he could go down the route of a guy that if he's ramping up and healthy, you got to give David Robertson a call. I don't know how many times I need to reiterate and say this. We broke it down in a video this past week. Check it out in case you guys haven't already. Has David Robertson on the thumbnail in his Mets hat when he was on the Mets, and was an absolute dynamo for them as a closer with Edwin Diaz down with injury for the first half of the 2023 season. So needless to say, the Mets do have options, but who will be best for them in both low and high leverage, that is what we have yet to figure out. And because we have yet to figure it out, don't be shocked if the Mets face more adversity with their bullpen than ever before this season, as we now are in the month of May. They have a harder schedule, far more difficult on paper than what they had there in April. It's only going to get worse from here, so it's imperative to not only get more innings out of these starters, but for this bullpen to not be too unbelievably taxed, because again, there is a lack of certainty in there with no AJ Minter, and now to a lesser degree, no Danny Young for the entirety of the 2025 season. Folks, that is going to do it for our latest Big Mets Update segment. I hope you found yourself enjoying the content. If you did, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way out, and let us know all your key takeaways in the comments down below. Hopefully the audio and the visuals are okay for you guys, but again, thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you all in the next one. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.